The solitude of chosen souls is not, as many imagine, a state of abandonment, exclusion, or regression in life. It is a realm of conscious and profound introspection that continues even amidst crowds. Even when dozens of people are talking in a room, laughter echoing, and everything appears normal on the surface, these souls possess a silent room that no one can enter. This room is not empty. On the contrary, it is filled with awareness, and this awareness is not a burden that every person can bear. This state is often confused with a lack of social skills, avoidance of people, or an inability to participate in life. But the truth is quite the opposite. Chosen souls understand people so well that they consciously refuse to remain on the surface. Small talk, repetitive sentences, and empty conversations tire them. Because their minds hear not only the words spoken, but also the unspoken. They perceive the tension in someone's laughter, the fear beneath a sentence, the weariness buried in silence. It is scientifically known that the human mind begins to lose its capacity for deep perception when constantly exposed to stimuli. Noise, social pressure, speed, constant connectivity, all of these cause the brain to remain in a superficial processing mode. Deep thought, intuition, and meaning-making only emerge in tranquility. Therefore, almost all figures who have shaped humanity throughout history, philosophers, sages, thinkers, mystics, have experienced conscious solitude at certain periods of their lives. Because when the outside world falls silent, the inner world begins to speak. Silence brings together the scattered fragments of the mind. In psychology, this is called integration. When a person is alone, they begin to lower the faces they show to others. The need to pretend decreases, defenses loosen. And in this moment of relaxation, the person truly encounters themselves for the first time. Chosen souls do not shy away from this encounter. They enter that inner silence that most people fear, because they know that what they need to remember is there, and what they are running away from is not. This is why chosen souls tire quickly in crowds. This is not due to physical factors, but to their nervous system. Research shows that individuals with high sensitivity have nervous systems that react more quickly and deeply to environmental stimuli. These people not only see what they observe, but also sense the emotional climate of their surroundings. They carry within them suppressed anger, unspoken resentments, and the unseen tensions of a room. This makes prolonged social interaction exhausting for them. When people are talking in a setting, chosen souls pay more attention to pauses than words. They notice why the silence following a sentence is prolonged. They sense the story behind someone avoiding eye contact. This doesn't make them introverted. It makes them highly perceptive. And deep perception, if not balanced by solitude, can lead to exhaustion over time. Therefore, solitude is not an escape for them, but a path to balance. There is an important misunderstanding here. Solitude is not weakness. On the contrary, a person is strong to the extent that they can be alone, because being able to be alone means being able to stand by one's own thoughts, fears, and feelings. Chosen souls do not constantly need the approval of others, because they possess a solid point of reference within themselves. They don't determine what they feel, believe, or disbelieve based on external applause. That's why they are often labeled as distant, cold, or unreachable. But this distance stems not from others, but from chaos. This coldness doesn't stem from a lack of love, but from selectivity. They have learned not to open themselves to everyone, because not everyone can bear their inner world. A person who can protect their inner world is, in fact, a person who can remain true to themselves. The voice of God, whether you call it conscience, intuition, or deep awareness, doesn't speak loudly. This voice doesn't shout, doesn't force, doesn't try to attract attention. This voice is only heard when emptiness is created. Silence creates this emptiness. Therefore, the withdrawal of chosen souls into solitude is not a loss. It is a process of harmony. Just like tuning a musical instrument, tuning cannot be done in noise. Fine-tuning requires silence. Over time, these souls realize that when they are alone, they don't weaken. On the contrary, they become clearer. They understand better what they want. They see more clearly what they don't want. They sense more easily where to stop and what to say no to. This clarity increases quality rather than quantity in their lives. They attract the right people into their lives, not just a lot, because inner peace brings external selectivity. If someone feels misunderstood in a crowd, experiences inner weariness even after long conversations, and finds a strange peace when alone, this is not a deficiency. It is an indication of the depth of their inner world. And like all profound things, this is not a burden everyone can bear. Deep waters are silent. Shallow places are noisy. Chosen souls may not love solitude. Human nature longs for connection, but they are not afraid of it, because they know that the more alone a person is, the closer they get to God. And this closeness creates a sense of wholeness that crowds cannot provide. Therefore, while everyone else chooses noise, they prefer silence, because in silence, they remember who they are. And when a person remembers who they are no longer alone, because they have become friends with themselves. Chapter 2. The commitment to seeing the truth, but not suppressing it. One of the heaviest commitments carried by chosen souls is the ability to see the truth, but to learn not to always voice it. When these individuals enter a room, they not only hear what is said, they also perceive intentions, inconsistencies, fears hidden behind words, and suppressed emotions. They notice that someone speaking confidently is actually seeking reassurance. Another is secretly defensive while laughing, and yet another carries a deep vulnerability beneath their anger. This is not guesswork or imagination. It is the ability to read the micro cues of the human mind. Scientifically, a large part of human communication is nonverbal. Neuropsychology and behavioral sciences show that people express their intentions and true feelings more through body language, tone of voice, facial expressions, and timing than through words. Most people don't consciously notice these signals. However, individuals with high perceptual sensitivity process this data automatically. This is why chosen souls are described as highly intuitive or experts at judging people. Their minds piece together details that others miss and arrive at a quiet conclusion. But this ability can be as much a burden as it is a gift, because seeing the truth means seeing how many people can bear it. Most people want to hear the narrative that makes them feel safe, not the truth. That's why masks exist. Social identities, defense mechanisms, and roles are ways people protect themselves. Suddenly removing someone's mask means confronting them with a truth they are not prepared to face. Chosen souls know this. This is where wisdom comes in. Wisdom isn't about saying everything you see. Wisdom is about knowing the time, the dose, and the recipient of the truth. In psychology, this is called emotional capacity. Every person has the capacity to process the truth, and when this capacity is challenged, defenses kick in: denial, anger, contempt, or aggression. Chosen souls intuitively understand whether the person before them possesses this capacity, and often they choose to remain silent. This silence is not cowardice. On the contrary, it requires great self-control. Seeing the truth but not speaking, it requires a retreat of the ego. Because most people, when they speak the truth, want to be understood, to prove they are right, or to triumph. But chosen souls seek not to be right, but to maintain balance. That's why they remain silent when everyone else is speaking. They have much to say, but they weigh whether speaking will improve things. That's why throughout their lives, they encounter phrases like, "Why didn't you say anything?" Or, "You knew this." Yes, they knew. But knowing doesn't always mean intervening. Sometimes a person must confront their own truth. Learning is lasting when it comes from one's own experience, not from someone else's mouth. Chosen souls prefer to observe from a distance rather than interrupt others' journeys. This commitment is also emotionally heavy because seeing the truth leads to an early disillusionment with people. Understanding the difference between what someone says and what they feel makes it difficult to maintain superficial relationships. That's why chosen souls often say, "People tire me out." In reality, it's not the people themselves that are tiring, but the constant exposure to masks. Seeing the truth and remaining silent creates internal pressure. To balance this pressure, they turn to solitude. From a neuroscientific perspective, high empathy and enhanced intuition are associated with a more active mirror neuron system in the brain. This system allows us to feel the emotions of others as if they were our own. Chosen souls don't just notice someone's fear, guilt, or suppressed anger. They feel it in their bodies. Therefore, telling every truth wears them down, not just the other person, but themselves as well. Silence is sometimes a form of self-protection. There's a delicate balance here. Remaining silent isn't the same as suppressing. Chosen souls don't deny, cover up, or deceive themselves about the truth. They wait for the right time. They know that a sentence spoken at the right time can change a life, while a sentence spoken at the wrong time can close a door forever. That's why they hold back their words. And this restraint is often misunderstood. People often confuse speaking loudly with power, but true power lies in being effective without words. The presence of chosen souls often calms the atmosphere because their demeanor speaks louder than their words. Eye contact, silence, pauses. All of these, consciously or unconsciously, create awareness in the other person. Sometimes, without saying anything, they cause someone to question themselves. This connection makes them more selective over time. They carefully adjust to whom and how much they open up and with whom they share truths. Not everyone can enter their inner world, because not everyone wants to hear the truth. Some only want reassurance, some want confirmation, and some never want to awaken. As chosen souls realize this, they become friends with silence. If you can easily sense people's intentions in an environment, but are misunderstood when you voice them. If you often remain silent and instead of saying, "I wish I hadn't said that," you say, "I'm glad I stayed silent." If seeing the truth sometimes makes you feel alone, this is not a deficiency. This is a result of the sharpness of consciousness. Wisdom isn't about knocking on every door. Wisdom is about knowing which door isn't ready to be opened. And chosen souls don't use truth as a weapon. They carry it as a trust, something to be delivered to the right person with the right words when the time comes. That's why God gives some souls the ability to see the truth, but tests them with silence. Because not every truth is for everyone, and not every truth is spoken at every moment. Chapter 3. Commitment to deepening through suffering. The path of chosen souls is often hardened at an early age because these souls are prepared to live a deep life that is not easy. Fractures, losses, disappointments, and inner collapses are placed in their path not as punishment, but as a mechanism to deepen their consciousness. Therefore, when they look back on certain periods of their lives, they realize that they never experienced what others call normal. They mature early. They become quiet early. They understand early. These souls don't seem to have chosen to suffer, but suffering constantly finds them because they were not born with a consciousness that would remain superficial. God prepares some souls not to be consoled, but to awaken. An awakening almost always begins not with consolation, but with shock. In psychology, this is called post-traumatic growth. Research shows that some people, after difficult experiences, not only heal, but also develop a deeper sense of meaning, a stronger inner structure, and a broader capacity for empathy. Chosen souls belong to this group. However, there is an important distinction here. Not all suffering deepens a person. Some suffering hardens, isolates, and pushes a person into a defensive position. The difference with chosen souls is that instead of suppressing their suffering, they have the courage to confront it. They don't run away. They don't numb it. They don't try to forget quickly. They live with the pain. And this transition takes them to an inner layer that others cannot easily reach. That's why their suffering is often silent. They don't complain loudly, because what they are experiencing is not just an event, but a transformation. At the nervous system level, intense emotional experiences restructure the brain's meaning centers. When a person suffers, they stop living on autopilot. Questions arise such as, why am I here? What is reality? Who can I trust? Chosen souls don't run away from these questions. They live with them. Those around them often find them too deep, too sensitive, or too serious. But this seriousness stems from their inability to see the world as it was before, after the traumas they have experienced. A truly broken person is not easily affected by superficial cheerfulness. Someone who has lost once looks at everything more carefully. A person who has been broken inside notices the cracks in the smiles of others. This sensitivity makes them incredibly empathetic towards the pain of others, because a person who has been hurt themselves knows where the pain of another lies. That's why chosen souls are good listeners. People open up to them without knowing exactly why, because the person opposite them doesn't judge, doesn't rush, doesn't belittle. Their presence gives the other person the feeling that you can be vulnerable here. This is no coincidence. Neuroscience shows that the capacity for empathy often deepens through personal experiences of pain. The brain registers every intense emotional experience as a point of reference. Chosen souls inevitably accumulate these references. That's why they can feel the weight of years in a single sentence from another. They can understand a breakdown in a glance. They can hear a scream in the silence. But this depth doesn't come without a price. These souls often ask themselves, why is my life so difficult? Why are some people so deeply affected by the same things, while others remain unshaken? The answer is this: because their systems are more open, more permeable, less defensive. And this openness makes them both more vulnerable and wiser. God sends these souls not with thick armor, but with open nerve endings. Because what truly awakens others is not walls, but a consciousness that can make contact. That is why chosen souls sometimes feel so much, think so much, question so much. But precisely because of this, they deepen. Depth is created by processing pain. Pain that is avoided hardens. Pain that is encountered transforms. The most important thing to understand in this section is this: the difficulties that chosen souls experience are not to punish them, but to expand the capacity they can carry within themselves. The deeper a vessel, the more it can hold. The hearts, consciousness, and perceptions of these souls expand. And expansion always happens through pressure. Just as muscles grow under load, consciousness deepens under load. That is why they may ask themselves, why always me, throughout their lives. But over time, they realize that every setback they experience doesn't separate them from something, but rather brings them closer to it. It has severed them from false ties. It has separated them from misleading identities. It has steered them away from paths that weren't their own. Pain has slowly pushed them towards their true selves. At a certain point, their perspective on suffering changes. They no longer see it as an enemy. They see it as a teacher, a harsh, ruthless, but honest teacher. And this teacher elevates them to a point where they can see things others cannot. That is why chosen souls, when they enter a room, feel not only what is said, but also what is experienced. If you too have experienced recurring setbacks in your life, if you feel you have matured too early, if you find that things others consider exaggerated deeply affect you, this is not a weakness. This is a sign that you are being prepared for depth. Not every soul is sent to live on the surface. Some are sent to descend into the depths. And God does not prepare souls worthy of depth through easy paths. Chapter 4. The commitment to carrying others. There is a subtle yet powerful common trait in the lives of chosen souls. When they enter a room, the tone of the atmosphere changes. Even without speaking, something calms, slows down, softens. People begin to breathe more easily, without fully understanding why. They feel an urge to share what they are holding inside, and they open doors they wouldn't normally open. This isn't a learned skill. It's a frequency that is carried. Psychology and neuroscience explain this as the emotional regulatory effect. The human brain doesn't work alone. It's constantly interacting with the nervous system of the person opposite. When in contact with someone who has a secure, calm, and consistent nervous system, the other person's body unconsciously adapts to this order. Therefore, chosen souls often unconsciously balance the inner chaos of others. They are rare consciousnesses that listen without speaking, creating space without interfering. The biggest misconception about these souls is the idea that everyone is like this, but they aren't. Not everyone can carry the burden of another. However, chosen souls do this involuntarily. Their high capacity for empathy sharpens their perceptions, and they feel the emotional states of others in their own bodies. They feel someone's tension on their shoulders, someone's fear in their chest, someone suppressed anger in their stomach. That's why they get tired in crowds, but they find it difficult to explain why. People don't just confide in them, they unconsciously transfer their burdens to them. This transfer is not done with malice. The nervous system, like a child crying in the presence of a trusted adult, releases the burden where it finds relief. Chosen souls often become this figure of trust. However, this can turn into a cycle of constant giving and self-forgetfulness. The fine line here is, the commitment to carrying others is not a task of self-destruction. However, many chosen souls learn this distinction late, because from a young age, they take on the roles of understanding, managing, and balancing in family, relationships, friendships. They are always strong, always bring people together, always remain calm. Over time, these roles become part of their identity. Neuropsychology tells us this: individuals who constantly regulate others, but not themselves, may experience chronic fatigue, emotional exhaustion, and inner emptiness. Many chosen souls reach this point and ask, "Why am I so tired?" The answer is simple, but painful. Because for too long, you made room for everyone, but not for yourself. This commitment is a gift, because true healing often comes from being, not from techniques. Being truly seen, not judged, not rushed, has a healing effect on the nervous system. Chosen souls naturally radiate this effect. But this gift is also a heavy burden, because unless you learn to set boundaries, this power will exhaust you. Over time, chosen souls realize you can't carry everyone. You can't save everyone. Not everyone wants to stay on your frequency. Some people remain just a burden, unwilling to transform. This awareness is the point of maturity for the commitment to carrying others. When it matures, this commitment becomes, I create space, but I don't carry. I listen, but I don't receive. I am there, but I don't step into your shoes. At this point, chosen souls begin to forge deeper connections with fewer people. The crowds thin out, and connections become selective. Because they now know they can't truly contribute to others without maintaining their own frequency. That's why some people find them changed. They're not as approachable as before. They can't adapt to everything as easily. They're not as willing to carry as before. But this isn't hardening, it's wisdom. Because a soul capable of carrying others must first maintain its own balance. If you notice that people open up to you easily, share their problems with you, feel comfortable around you, but you often feel lonely, it's no coincidence. It's a sign of your determination to carry others. But remember, this determination isn't a call to self-sacrifice. It's a call to learn to serve while protecting yourself. Chosen souls reach true power when they learn to carry others not just on their backs, but with their whole being. When the heavy armor of the old self falls, inner space expands. Breathing becomes deeper and more natural. Reactions lessen, perception increases. You defend less, feel more. You begin to perceive the world not through a filter of fear, but through direct experience. The dissolution of the old identity takes nothing valuable from you. On the contrary, it removes limitations that are not yours. When these layers fall, your true self emerges. This is not a new version. This is the version that was never lost. And with this clarity, everything in your life begins to align with the real one, not the false identity. This is a sign of stepping out of the old zone and entering a layer of consciousness where the real one no longer needs to be hidden. Dissolution is not an end. It is where awareness truly begins. Chapter 5. The decision to let go of control. Some souls find themselves in the same place over and over again. No matter how hard they try, doors close. No matter how persistent they are, paths become difficult. And no matter how much they plan, things never go as planned. These repetitions are not accidental. Sooner or later, these souls are taught a lesson. Not everything can be controlled. And this lesson is a turning point for the chosen souls. Letting go of control is not passivity, surrender, or fatalism, as many people think. Rather, it is a much higher level of consciousness. Psychologically, the need for control often stems from a fear of uncertainty. When the mind cannot predict the future, it intervenes and produces the illusion that I will be safe if I arrange everything myself. However, while this strategy may seem comforting in the short term, in the long term, it becomes exhausting, hardening, and puts the person in a constant struggle for survival. The chosen souls do not remain in this struggle for long, because life shows them again and again the things they force themselves to do either fail or lead to unexpected results. Conversely, when they relinquish control, doors open that they never planned for. This isn't a matter of belief, but knowledge learned through direct experience. Therefore, these souls eventually realize that the mind wants to control, while consciousness wants to adapt. Neuroscience offers something important here. A mind constantly under control keeps the sympathetic nervous system active. That is, the body constantly lives in threat mode. This leads to tension, haste, impatience, and wrong decisions. A mind that relinquishes control activates the parasympathetic system. Perception expands, intuition strengthens, and the person begins to interpret events holistically, not just with their mind. This is where the chosen soul's ability to be in the right place at the right time comes from. This commitment is particularly evident at moments of decision. If a door closes, they don't force it open, because they know that a closed door is not just an obstacle, but also a sign. The mind's plan is usually based on past experiences, but God's plan encompasses possibilities yet to be experienced. The chosen souls know this intuitively. Therefore, they don't perceive every closure as a personal rejection. Similarly, they don't hesitate unnecessarily when the door opens. They don't overanalyze, sabotage themselves, or get stuck on the question of what happens next. Because letting go of control isn't about blindly jumping in, but about following inner harmony. If they have clarity within, they will take the step even if there is chaos outside. Over time, this commitment teaches them that life opens up not to those who struggle, but to those who adapt. What we call flow isn't laziness. It's about acting with the right strength at the right time. Chosen souls no longer expend their energy pushing, but reading. They observe which environment creates resistance, which relationship offers a natural sense of expansion, which idea creates tension in the body, which brings relief. Their bodies become their compass. There's a very subtle but vital difference here. Letting go of control doesn't mean giving up responsibility. These souls still work, produce, and strive, but they don't force the outcome. They don't try to manage the process. They do what they need to do and then leave room for what is to come. This makes them both calmer and more effective. Many people misunderstand this. They're often labeled as lazy, going with the flow, and carefree. In reality, these souls have stopped fighting life, but they haven't stopped living. Letting go of control doesn't weaken them. On the contrary, it makes them more resilient, more determined, and more intuitive. This connection deepens, especially during times of loss, separation, and sudden change. Chosen souls don't collapse in these moments. They grieve, they feel, they mourn, but they don't fall apart. Because if they know something is falling apart, there's no longer a need to carry it. The mind sees the loss, but the consciousness feels the void created. And over time, something very important happens. As these souls stop trying to control life, life begins to carry them. The right people come at the right time. Processes that move forward without coercion increase. The effort doesn't decrease, but the friction ends. At this point, the person clearly understands. I didn't give up. I trusted. The determination to let go of control is the quietest but most powerful threshold that liberates chosen souls. Because beyond this threshold, they no longer walk in the narrow corridors of the mind, but in the wide, open spaces of life. And they know that God's plan is infallible and not hasty. Chapter 6. The commitment to transcending identity. Perhaps the deepest and most complex stage of the journey of chosen souls is the commitment to transcending identity. Most people shape their identity according to their past experiences, social roles, education, or labels, and manage their lives within these boundaries. But for chosen souls, identity cannot be limited to a simple definition. They are neither entirely of this world nor entirely detached from it. This duality often leads to misunderstandings and feelings of alienation in their environment, because people tend to think in terms of clear categories and fixed labels. Yet God works with souls who can transcend boundaries, for these souls can transform not only those who fit a certain pattern, but also those who have the capacity to experience all the possibilities of life. This commitment is a turning point in the natural evolution of the soul. Psychologically speaking, most people tie their identity to their past experiences, memories, and social approval. They build their values and meanings upon these patterns. But chosen souls learn to transcend these patterns. For them, identity is fluid and multifaceted. Every situation, every relationship, every choice reveals a different aspect of the soul. In this process, the soul's flexibility and adaptability are constantly tested, because transcending identity requires freeing oneself from past pains, successes, societal expectations, and even self-imposed limitations. Another important point is that these souls are neither completely detached from the world, nor completely bound to it. This leads them to constantly seek balance in their interactions with their environment. While some are preoccupied with understanding and managing the needs and relationships of the material world, others connect with spiritual depth, intuition, and inner awareness. This oscillation between these two extremes is sometimes perceived by those around them as strange, incomprehensible, or unbalanced. However, chosen souls accept this oscillation as a natural process, because transcending identity is not about remaining stagnant, but about being in a state of constant change. From a neuroscientific perspective, the commitment to transcending identity requires a constant synchronization between the brain's higher consciousness regions and emotional centers. This synchronization both strengthens empathic abilities and enhances intuition. The capacity to quickly perceive the emotions, intentions, and energies of others increases. Simultaneously, trust in one's inner voice makes decision-making processes faster and healthier. A soul that has transcended identity no longer acts solely within the confines of logic or the past, but with holistic awareness. This makes them a silent, yet powerful guide in their environment. One of the most challenging experiences in the process of transcending identity is the blurring of one's own boundaries. Chosen souls can no longer define themselves with a single role or label. Sometimes they are leaders in the workplace, sometimes they support a community, and sometimes they are a solitary, silent observer. This diversity can be confusing in the eyes of others, as people prefer to live with fixed definitions and clear roles. However, chosen souls know that true freedom comes from existing with a flexible and changeable identity. Transcending identity also means freeing oneself from prejudices, past wounds, and societal expectations. This commitment also strengthens the soul's inner wisdom. Chosen souls no longer need external validation or recognition because they are in harmony with their own inner truth. This makes them both free and effective. While most people measure freedom by choices and opportunities, chosen souls measure freedom by inner harmony. Transcending identity allows the soul to synchronize its inner frequency with the outer world. Through this synchronization, the right people, the right experiences, and the right opportunities flow into their lives naturally and effortlessly. Transcending identity also brings a profound responsibility. These souls become role models not only for their own growth, but also for the awakening and awareness of others. However, this responsibility is not a heavy burden, but a natural reflection. Because a soul that has transcended identity has learned to manage its own energy and space, thus radiating a harmonious and supportive force to its surroundings. These commitments are not a sign of privilege or superiority. Rather, they require profound maturity, inner resilience, and responsibility. While most people choose to live life more superficially, some souls are unknowingly called to deeper levels. This call can sometimes be unsettling, even exhausting, because this path teaches carrying, not fleeing. If you sometimes feel alone in a crowd, if you pay more attention to what people feel than what they say, if you realize that small things affect you deeply, but you can stand tall even in major crises, this is not a contradiction, but a sign. Sensitivity is not weakness. On the contrary, it is a natural trait seen in individuals with a more open nervous system and level of consciousness. These people perceive the world more intensely and therefore both tire more quickly and understand more deeply. Scientifically, the brains of such individuals may show higher activity in regions associated with threat perception, empathy, and intuition. This makes them more sensitive and conscious of their surroundings. They notice emotional burdens early, sense conflicts before they escalate, and can perceive signals that others ignore. That's why sometimes they're told, "You think too much," or "You're too sensitive." But the truth is, deep perception has always been difficult for those who live on the surface to understand. If this burden has been given to you, there is a reason. Not every soul can carry the same weight. Some come to experience, some to guide, and some to transform emotions that others cannot bear. If you have learned to carry what you cannot escape, it is not a punishment. It is a process of preparation. Because souls who can carry it create balance not only for themselves, but also for others. Remember, This path may be lonely, but it is not meaningless. It may be silent, but it is not empty. It may be heavy, but not to crush you, but to deepen you. Because some souls are chosen not to escape, but to make sense of, transform, and carry the burden. This choice is invisible from the outside, but undeniable when viewed from within.